Mondays in Louisiana means red beans and rice for dinner. And this tradition goes all the way back to the days when ladies needed to make a hands-off dinner while doing a little bit of laundry. Well, I would do laundry every single day for a big bowl of red beans and rice, but it's pretty hard to duplicate outside of the Pelican State. Luckily, Erin is here to show us the voodoo of red beans and rice.
Red beans and rice is one dish you really need to get right. It's the heart and soul of New Orleans cooking. And what we wanted was a very hearty dish, very smoky and very meaty. And our beans needed to be creamy.
Excellent.
And also we wanted to make this available to everybody because some of the ingredients that are in traditional recipes are hard to find.
That's right.
So we're gonna start with the beans.
Okay.
Okay? So camellia beans are the traditional bean down in New Orleans. So we thought that we could just buy kidney beans up here. We found that their skins were too chewy and that their flesh was too mealy. So we went and tried a couple of other things. Our favorite bean was the small red bean. This is also called the Mexican bean. And this is creamy and the skins were very tender. So we're gonna use these and we're actually gonna brine our beans, Bridget.
Brining beans softens the skins so that the beans, as they cook, well, they don't crack open.
Exactly, and it seasons them all the way throughout. So I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of salt to 4 quarts of water. Just gonna whisk this to combine. Just add those beans right in there. And we're gonna let these brine at least 8 hours and up to 24 hours.
Okay, so you can do this a day in advance?
Exactly. Okay, Bridget, it's time for the meat.
My favorite part.
Legitimate Louisiana recipes for red beans and rice, the signature flavors come from 3 different pork products. So we have andouille sausage right here, which is pretty easy to find. Then we have pickled pork shoulder. I've never seen it in my grocery stores.
No, I've never seen it either.
Pickled pork is really important because it adds brightness to our red beans and rice. And then third, we have tasso. Tasso is heavily spiced ham that is smoked until it's almost like jerky. It's hard to find also, but we're gonna find a substitute for it.
Yeah, I haven't seen this at my grocery store either.
No, me neither. Okay, so come over here. So we have 4 slices of bacon. Bacon is gonna be part of our solution for the tasso. Bacon is gonna give us that pork flavor and also the smokiness that we're missing. So this has been rendering for about 5 to 8 minutes until it's nice and brown. To the bacon, we're gonna add 1 onion that's been finely chopped, 1 small green pepper that's been seeded and finely chopped, and 1 celery rib that's been finely chopped. And this is also known as the Holy Trinity. Holy Trinity is the foundation to most Cajun recipes.
Well, the French, they have their mirepoix. If Latin cooking has its sofrito, and Cajun and Creole cooking, well, they have the Holy Trinity. They're all doing the same thing, which is establishing a flavor base. The components of all 3 are humble and inexpensive vegetables, but they're considered indispensable in their respective traditions. These all-important veg sort of disappear in the finished dish. I like to think of them as the unsung heroes of the ingredient world. Their flavors permeate the food, and without them, well, the dish would simply taste flat and one-dimensional.
So our vegetables have softened. These have cooked for about 6 to 7 minutes, and now we're ready for our spices.
Great.
So because we're not using the tasso, we need to make up for the spices that we're lacking. So we're gonna add 1 teaspoon of paprika, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne, and we're adding 3 garlic cloves that we've minced, 1 teaspoon of thyme leaves, and also 2 bay leaves. So we're gonna cook this until it's fragrant, about 30 seconds.
Oh,
You can already smell it.
Absolutely.
So I've drained and rinsed our brine beans, and I'm gonna add them to the pot. And I'm gonna add 3 cups of chicken broth and 6 cups of water. A lot of the old recipes for red beans and rice call for all water, and then a lot of the more modern versions call for all chicken broth. And so we tried both, and we found that this was the perfect ratio.
That's great, and there's just enough chicken broth in here, but not so much that it's going to overtake that pork.
Exactly, yes, we want that pork flavor to come through. So we're gonna bring this up to a boil, and once it comes to a boil, we're gonna cut it back, but we're not gonna cut it back to like a very low simmer like usually you would cook beans. We want this to be at a vigorous simmer, and we want that because we want the beans to kind of knock against each other and really throw off their starches, because we want this to be a creamy dish. We want the beans to be creamy. And you're gonna be surprised that the beans are gonna hold their shape. Okay, so this has been simmering vigorously for about 45 minutes, and the beans are just tender.
But they're not exploded?
And they're not exploded. Check
Oh,
that
wow.
out, Bridget.
You were right.
Yep. But now we're gonna move on to our other 2 key ingredients, andouille sausage which is a must. So we're gonna add 8 ounces of andouille sausage that we cut into bite-sized pieces.
Okay.
Not only are we gonna heat the andouille sausage through, we want to impart the smoky, spicy flavor into our beans. Okay, and then the next key ingredient is pickled pork shoulder, which, as we mentioned, is very, very, very hard to find. We did try making our own pickled pork shoulder, and it was a 3-day process, and that's something that nobody's gonna wanna do. A shot in the dark, we tried adding just a teaspoon of vinegar. It added the bright acidity that the pork added to it.
Great.
So this is magic in a small bowl. 1 teaspoon of red wine vinegar. And we're just gonna continue to cook this for about 30 minutes until the beans are fully cooked and creamy and have thrown off all that nice starch to make that very creamy liquid. So now we're gonna move on to the rice. Here we have 2 cups of long grain white rice. Can you please put that in the colander and just rinse it until the water runs clear? What we're doing is rinsing off that excess starch, and it's gonna really help us to produce a very fluffy white rice at the end.
Sounds good.
Meanwhile, I'm gonna melt a tablespoon of butter.
Rice is rinsed and ready, Captain.
Good job. All right, our butter is just about melted. Okay, so now we're gonna saute our rice. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna coat the rice in the fat, and we're gonna cook it until the rice starts to become aromatic and also translucent. This is a really important step in making any rice dishes. Okay, so our rice is ready. We're gonna add 3 cups of water and a teaspoon of table salt.
So that's a 1 to 1.5 ratio of rice to liquid. Now that's different from the back of the box package, which often has a 1 to 2. So in those directions, they would have 2 cups of rice and 4 cups of water. But what that does is it actually creates very gummy rice. Oddly enough, using less water means it's less water to be absorbed by that rice, and you get fluffier, more tender grains.
Exactly, which is what we want. So we're gonna bring this up to a boil over high heat. And once it comes to a boil, I'm gonna reduce the heat down to low, and I'm gonna put the lid on it and let it simmer for about 18 minutes, just until all that water is absorbed. Once the water is absorbed, I'm gonna take it off the heat. I'm gonna take the lid off. I'm gonna wrap it up with a towel, and I'm gonna let it sit on the back burner for about 15 minutes to just steam. All right, so our beans are perfect, Bridget.
We're close to done?
We're close to done.
Yes.
Yep, see how they've reduced a bit? And that liquid is nice and creamy?
Yes.
And the beans are still intact?
Not soupy.
Not soupy. I'm gonna remove the bay leaves that we added. So now I'm just gonna add a splash of red wine vinegar. We added a teaspoon earlier, but at the end, I'm just gonna add a couple more drops just to make it pop. And I'm just gonna taste it to see if it needs any salt. I know it doesn't need pepper because we had a lot of pepper earlier. I think it's perfect. It's
Great.
so good. You're gonna love it.
Excellent.
You're gonna love it.
That is very fluffy rice.
It's because we rinsed that starch off.
And it's
All right.
nice because there's still enough of that brothy sauce in there.
And it's creamy sauce.
Oh yeah.
Here are some scallions and some hot sauce. Help yourself.
Thank you. Now, even before I tuck into this, what I'm amazed by, and I was really, really skeptical about, look at the beans. I mean, they are all intact, and that was despite that vigorous simmering. That's because you brined the
And they're
beans.
so tender, Bridget. They're really tender.
I guess it would be good for me to eat them.
Or I could just describe it to you.
Melt in your mouth tender. In fact, I can't believe that they look like this in the bowl, because when you go to eat them,
I know.
they just fall apart in your mouth. It's perfect. A lot of smoke in there between the bacon and the andouille. And poor little rice underneath, not getting any love from us. That rice is fluffy, tender, and ready to soak up all
Yeah.
that beautiful creamy sauce.
It's doing its job.
Make Monday's Red Beans and Rice Day in your home. The key is using the right substitutions for hard-to-find ingredients. Cook smoky bacon in place of tasso ham, then saute the trinity for authentic Louisiana flavor. Add garlic, paprika, and lots of pepper, along with brined small red beans, and those are a fine sub for Camellia brand beans. Add plenty of andouille sausage and a little red wine vinegar to take the place of briny pickled pork shoulder. And there you have it, from our test kitchen to your kitchen, the most satisfying red beans and rice.
Thanks for watching America's Test Kitchen. What'd you think?
Well, leave a comment and let us know which recipes you're excited to make, or you can just say hello.
You can find links to today's recipes and reviews in the video description.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
See you later.
I'll see you later.